Welcome to Selfish Confidence, a place where we can connect and be real about how hard it is to be your damn self. My name is Jess, and my goal is to help you build confidence and belief in yourself to live any life path you want, even if it's unconventional. It's time to flip off societal pressures and connect with women who've also felt on the outside by their life choices. We're here to encourage you to grab the mic and speak your truth. I know it can be scary, but we're in this together. Let's get started. Okay. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Selfish Confidence Podcast. It is a fun day over here. Sun is shining, and we have Cristal here. Hello, Cristal. Welcome.
Hello. I'm so stoked to be here.
Yeah, we just spent the last 20 minutes already diving into so many things, and I should have hit record because it was awesome stories and awesome conversation. So can you tell us a bit about you, Cristal, and how you got started on your journey?
Yeah, so I am a former school teacher. My whole life, I had that little feeling of there was another goal I had to hit. So I was like, okay, I'm a first generation college. I should backtrack. I'm a first generation middle school graduate, high school graduate, college graduate, university, master's, all the things. I'm the first generation. My parents were born in Mexico. So they traveled here illegally, came to this country so that I could be born here. So as a little kid, I always had that feeling like I have to make their sacrifice count. And it's just something that whether my dad told me multiple times, I carried it on so heavy. I carried it so heavy. And I always had that thought in the back of my mind, there's more. So long story short, I started searching for goals all the time. What's my next goal? What's my next goal? What's my next goal? Eventually at 25, I went through a life crisis. I was like, all right, I'm the youngest teacher in the district. I have a house. I have my dream car. I have my career. I'm engaged. I'm supposed to get married. What comes next? But there was nothing else that came next besides having kids. There was no other goal. And I started going down a spiral of, I wouldn't say depression, but it was identity crisis of who am I? What's my purpose? And I'm going to work for the next 35 years and then I'm going to die. And it was this feeling of, I wasn't happy, but I wasn't miserable. It was just kind of And I went through it for the next, 4 years. And finally, got to the point where I completely lost myself. And I started going partying and drinking and just letting go of life to the point where I called off my marriage. I ended up quitting my job. I didn't know who I was. And I realized that through achieving all these goals, I had lost myself. So that put me down a path of wondering what came next. I went through my ugly season, very, very ugly season, where I was saying partying and hanging out with the wrong crowd. Led me eventually to selling insurance. It was like a company that sold insurance. The way the girl told me, she's like, hey, what do you do for your summers? I was like, nothing. I was like, I chill by the pool and drink. That's all I do. She's like, would you want to make extra money? I was like, not really. She's like, honestly, I think it'd be really good for you because no offense. She's like, but I see you're throwing your life away. And then I got super defensive and I was like, well, how much are we talking about? And I remember she said one product brought in $700 revenue. And I thought to myself, well, if I buy it, my thought was I can make this money and buy something bigger for our family or do more things. So I started working with them part-time and I was making $10,000 a month. And I was like, okay, this is pretty good. I didn't love it, but it led me down self-development. And then from self-development, I started into attending conferences, events. Eventually, I ended up finding breathwork completely. I was at an event for real estate thinking I was going to get a real estate license. And this guy goes on stage, does breathwork. I'm crying my eyes out, not knowing what is happening. I'm also the oldest in my family. So I kind of had been raised with the mentality of if I break, we all break. So I can't break. I can't show emotion. I'm the oldest. I'm the warrior of the family. So this guy's doing breath work and I'm crying. I look around and there's all these men, because the conference is 90% men. All these random men are crying. We all get up and we all hug strangers. And it feels like the most peace I've ever felt in my life. And I don't know what happens, but the teacher in me runs through the door and I'm telling the guy, what did you do? What was that? I need to know what happened. And he gives me his card. He's like, I think you're going to have fun getting certified. And he gave me his card. I ended up talking to him. A few months later, I got certified through breathwork. Then I got certified through trauma. And fast forward, we built the mission, She's Made for More, which is embodying the woman that you're made for more. You're more than a mom. You're more than a daughter. You're more than the teacher. You're more than whoever you think you are. There's a more to you that you get to discover. And it led to now we have events, retreats. We have a podcast. We have a community. We have a membership. But it all started with me losing myself, going through a radical discovery, self-discovery journey to finding me and who I am now.
Wow. Okay. Let's dive into that. I can very much relate to that losing yourself to find yourself moment too, because that's a big piece of my story as well. But when that person came up to you, you're like, hey, nah, I'm good. I don't need to do insurance. Like, what gave you the courage to actually change your mind and say, you know what? Okay, let's give it a try. Like, was there something in you? Was there an inner knowing? Like, what was it that just like let you let your guard down to do something different?
You know what? It was my ego. I've always, growing up, being the oldest, like I've never had, I mean, my parents don't speak English. So even for schoolwork, I was 5 years old trying to figure out what my homework said because they couldn't help me. I was making doctor's appointments for them at like 7 years old. I was scheduling maintenance for the house that we used to rent at like 8 years old. I've always figured it out. It was never an option of if I couldn't do it, then our family was lost. So I always had to figure it out. And she said something when she was walking away. She said, well, I feel like you're just losing your life or you're putting your life down the drain, something like that. And she said, it's so sad. She's like, because with the potential that you have, you could be so amazing. And she said that. And it was my ego that got hurt. I was like, wait a minute, like, you don't know me. You don't know anything about me. And that ego push that was happening, I was like, well, I'm going to do it. And I'm going to show you that I can do it so good. That's literally what happened. And I started, and sure enough, I became a top producer in the company. I started speaking on stages in the company. I started leading a huge team, but it all started with ego. And now looking back at it, I believe it was God in my path and telling me, hey, let me push you this way, because my story, I was in speech classes growing up because I didn't talk. And then when I talked, I had a problem where my tongue would click through my teeth. So every other word, like I couldn't pronounce it. So never in my life did I think I would be on stages and speaking. Now, fast forward, and most people are like, I didn't even know you had a speech problem. I was like, well, I know the words that I'm going to get stuck on. So I have to pause in my mind and think about what I'm going to say, and I'll change up the word so I don't get stuck on it. So I've done it long enough now where like I have my own little trick to help myself too. But I was speaking on stages with them. I was being at conferences, like, and I never in a million years thought that that's something that I wanted to do.
Did you ever have doubts in yourself that you could do it?
I think the biggest doubt was like more on speaking on stage. As far as the actual job, I learned the skill, I studied, and it was the same application for every single person. And the numbers, what also had happened during that time was my uncle had passed away, and us being in our culture, we don't believe in life insurance. We don't believe in health insurance. We don't believe in any of that stuff growing up. And now I know it's not that we didn't believe in it, it's that we never could afford it. And half of us here were illegally in the country. So it's not like we could ask for benefits because we didn't even have a social to work. So everybody was working at these jobs where they were hiding and hoping not to get deported my whole life. Where when my uncle passed away, it was a big burden in our family. My mom is the oldest daughter, and I saw her mentally break down, emotionally break down, financially break down. And I didn't have being a teacher, I didn't have the finances to help her like I wanted. I kept thinking if I just had $10,000, $20,000, I could just pay for the entire funeral. My mom could get at least her time in with her family instead of worrying all these avenues. And that burden fell on me exactly at the time that life insurance came into my life. So not only did I go through it with like, I could do this, but because it was happening as I was doing it, I also got to see the power of, wow, $25 a month can help somebody save for their life insurance, God forbid something happens, this burden doesn't fall on their family. It just all aligned so perfectly where I became a believer of the product too.
Wow. Yeah. I can see like how so many things come together in that moment for it to be the piece that led you down. And where we were talking before too, just about your energy and, your drive and the work ethic that you have, it is zero doubt in my mind. Like you were made to do something huge. You were made for more, just like your whole brand. And to watch it come to life from something so difficult, or even just to be challenged by someone who's like, well, you're throwing your life away. So like, you could do this insurance thing, you can make some money, or you can keep drinking by the pool. Like you do you. Yeah. And that like challenge that you were given kicked you in that direction of just changing your whole dang life. Like that's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
So where did the whole idea of She Is Made for More come from? Was it from this moment? Like where was it, like an epiphany in your head? You're just like, this is it. She's made for more. Like how did you bring that into the world and into your life?
I remember when I was in third grade, it's so funny because when I was in third grade, we were playing, the neighbors had, it was like I don't remember what the game was, but it was like Truth or Dare card edition. And it had like a little button and it asked you a question like, is it true that you want to be this? And you had to press the button before the timer. It was like a really cool game back then. Like, I don't know, it had to been like
back then.
Yeah.
But it's cool now too.
Yeah. I don't even know what it's called, but the question said, honestly, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like, and you can't, and like the game was like, you couldn't lie or something like that. And I remember thinking, and I remember I said, oh, I want to be president. And all the little kids laughed. Like, first of all, you're a girl. Second of all, like, how are you going to be president? And I was like, I was just kidding. That's not what I want to be. And I remember at such a young age, like I knew there was more for me to do. I just didn't know what it was. I never knew what it was. Then I became a teacher and I thought the more was like helping the youth. And I remember being like a troubled teen and how one teacher held on to me so tight. So I was like, maybe I'll be the teacher that helps another troubled teen. And my first year teaching, I actually got a teen that was going through it. And I got to be the teacher to be on that journey with him. And it's the most incredible connection I've ever made with one of my students in my journey. But I always thought that was my more. Up until I was like 4 years in teaching, we were having a pool party and I told my roommate, she was like 4 years older than me. And I said, hey, Liz, do you ever remember like what it was like to dream? And this was like a random conversation we were having like at 1 a.m. And she hears me out. And then I tell her, do you ever think there's more out there for us? And she goes, Cristal, you want me to say yes, but I'm not going to. She said, there's more for you to do out there, and I have no doubt. But for me, there's not. I'm okay teaching for the next 35 years and retiring and then living a very chill life. I don't need anything. This is my adrenaline. This is my moment. It's going to see my kiddos every year and serving them. This is what I was meant to do. She said, but I don't think it's what you were meant to do. And she said, and that's okay. I don't want you to think like you're broken or something's wrong with you because you can't find fulfillment in teaching. She said, I just think that you want me to validate your answer and I'm not going to, because that's something you have to discover on your own. And she said, do I think you're an amazing teacher? She said, yes. Do I think you were born to be a teacher? Absolutely. She's like, I've been in the classroom with you. I've seen you in work. You're born for this. She said, but being born for something and letting it fulfill you is completely different. She said, so you need to find what that is. And I can't give you the permission that you're asking me to do. And I remember that conversation to this day, what I was wearing, what she was wearing, how we were sitting down. And that conversation led to the next year, me leaving teaching, because she was right. I was asking for validation. I was asking.
What a great reminder too for the people who sometimes as an entrepreneur, I can look at people and be like, what do you mean you don't want more? Like, what do you mean you don't want to speak on stages? What do you, like, come on, like who wouldn't want this? Because it's such a rush and it feels so good, but it's not everybody's dream. And being so clear on what it is that is your dream. So I love how you started that conversation. Like, how can someone get clear on what their dream is. If their dream is to be a teacher or to be an architect or to be a dancer, I don't know.
Yeah.
But like even anything, like how can someone really discover their dream and lean into that?
Yeah. And it's also like allowing ourselves to really change our mind, because the reason why I didn't want to leave teaching was because I thought I was a failure. I was like, damn, I've worked really freaking hard. I have all this debt backing me up. I have, like, how am I just going to quit on teaching? Like, am I a quitter? Like, how am I going to leave? And that thought of I'm going to disappoint everybody would like surround me so heavy. And I remember that more that I was getting. I think when you're meant for more, you have that pull. You just know it. It's that gut feeling. And if you don't have it, it's perfectly okay. Like my friend, I love her so much and I will always cherish her. But like she said, I'm okay teaching for 35 years, retiring, living a chill life. I don't need to be on stage. I don't need people to know my name. I don't need my voice out there. It's like, as long as I'm with my kids, I'm good. And for me, I love teaching until like to this day, I still love my kids. Like I love teaching. I stay connected with all my students. Now they're in their 20s, which is wild to me. But
That's crazy.
When I loved it. Like I loved it and it served me a purpose. But then there came a point where I needed to that switch. And just because you want to change careers doesn't make you a failure. It doesn't make you a loser. It doesn't make you you're quitting because it got hard. No. Like that pull in your heart is the definition of, it's like your soul speaking to you and telling you, okay, there's another chapter that is waiting for you. And you might not know anything about it, because keep in mind, when I left teaching, I had no idea what I was going to do. No idea where my income was going to come in. I didn't have a plan. I just left. Probably not the best way to leave for everyone, but for me, I just left. I was like, you know what? I have retirement. I'm going to pull my retirement out. I'll kind of wing it for the next year and figure out where I'm supposed to be.
Wow.
Again, not the best way for everyone, but it worked for me.
Yeah. I love that. I love the courage to just go after it. You said too about the disappointment, like other people are going to be disappointed in you. And I actually just had a conversation with a client about this the other day. So were people disappointed? Was there anyone that was like, Cristal, you suck after you left teaching?
You know what? The biggest thing was I lost a lot of my friends because my friends were my teacher friends. And we had a Friendsgiving after I left. And I remember, well, one, I was already in self-development. So I was starting to shift perspectives. And I remember we went back to the Friendsgiving, me and my boyfriend at that time. And everybody was sitting there complaining about the system. This and this and that. And I felt so awkward. Because in my mind was like, if you guys don't like it so much, why don't you leave? Like that was my thought. But then I thought, well, this was me last year. We complain about life and then we stay at it. We complain about the things and we keep going. Like the way to fit in is to complain about things and watch how everyone reacts. I always tell people, I was talking to clients the other day and I was like, go into a gas station. And when somebody says, hey, how are you doing? Say, I'm doing amazing. How are you doing? Today's a beautiful day. They'll look at you like you're a complete weirdo. I was like, but go in there and say, oh, it's so hot, man. I can't believe the day's just, people will chime in and be like, I know what you mean. Oh, it was so hot. Like we love complaining as a crowd. I was like, but when somebody stands out and says, oh, life is so beautiful, we're kind of thinking like, oh, that person's fake or they're not real. And I remember in that table, like I didn't fit in. And it was very, very clear now that I didn't fit in. And it was hard for me because I knew that they still love me and they still wish me the best, but we were just in different places now. And slowly but surely, like I stopped talking to one and then another one. And again, I can call them today and I'm sure they'll answer me and they'll love on me, but it's just different routes now. My parents, I am the first person in the family who's ever gotten a career. So my dad had a habit of introducing me as his teacher. Oh, this is my teacher. Remember I talked to you about my teacher? This is my teacher. So when he didn't have that title to say anymore, we did go through a season of, I know I disappointed him. And that's what I was holding on to until I talked to him and he said, well, I just don't know what you're doing. He said, I don't understand. Like, do you work for the radio? Because we started a podcast. He's like, what is it? And the more I tried to explain to him, like he didn't understand. He didn't get it. And it went through a big phase of, even to this day, my parents have never attended my events. My parents don't really know what I do. When people ask them what I do, they always say she's a stay-at-home dog mom. Most people think like I don't work for my family, to the point where like they were reaching out to me, can you babysit this kid? Can you babysit this kid? And I was like, I have calls, I have work, but my family doesn't know what I do. So it put me through a situation of me realizing my family's allowed to love me, but they also don't have to understand me. And that's okay. So it was a big season of just adjusting my relationships in my life while honoring what I actually wanted to do too.
Yeah, that's a really hard one too. Like knowing that they have different views. My parents are in business. They've been in business for a very long time. But
Mm-hmm.
obviously their business looks very different than mine. They have a brick and mortar store and mine's totally digital right here in
Mm-hmm.
my office, right? And I think there's always that disconnect on what business was and still is for people and how business can be now and how you can do it differently. And we were just talking before we got on this call too about like that beautiful flow and having
Mm-hmm.
a business that works for me, not a business that I work for. And it just being this beautiful experience that comes with it. And people aren't always going to get it. Like they just
Yeah.
aren't. And the fact that we're sitting here on this beautiful afternoon recording with our two microphones in two different countries in two different,
Yes.
oceans essentially. You're on the Pacific coast, I'm on the East Coast.
Yeah.
Like just like having a very different life, but being able to connect and to share and to do business different is so beautiful. So what would you say to the woman who's listening to this who is made for more? They know it in their gut. They feel this like pull in a direction of wanting to do something, but they don't really know what that is. What would you tell them? Where would they start?
The number one thing is I would say when you're having that gut feeling, like honestly, just slowing down, putting a hand on your heart and saying, you know what, like talk to me, like speak to me, like I'm ready to listen. Because I think the more we resist, the more it drives us crazy, which is why like I lost myself. And when I came to surrender and say, okay, I have no idea where I'm going, but I'm trusting this little whisper in my voice, like this little whisper in my heart and my gut, I'm going to lean in and see what happens. It's lean in, get curious, plug in. The second thing would be like plug into a community. I can't express this enough because looking back at it, that insurance community, even though it wasn't like my community, they were all wanting more income, more freedom, more like opportunities for their kids. It was more. So that community allowed me to pour into myself and say, wait a minute, if Jess wants more freedom in her schedule, why wouldn't I? And it validated the answers that I think I was looking from my teacher friends that they couldn't give me. So plug into a community, whether it's attending a live event, whether it's joining a membership, a free Facebook group, but plug into women who are going to pour belief into you. Because I can't express this enough. When we try to do this by ourselves, we give up easily. And not because we are quitters, but it's because when we're not seeing the possibility of what we want in real life through somebody else, it gets really hard to believe in it yourself.
100%. Yes. It is like it's very lonely to do business, and especially where business is in our offices all alone, it can be so lonely. And sometimes you doubt where you're going and what you're doing. So just being able to have someone to call up and be like, hey, like I am doubting what I'm doing. It makes such a big difference. And to be in a room like where we met at Empower Her Live last year, to be in a room of people who do life differently and who just accept you for whatever decision you make in your life, whether that's to be a teacher, to be a veterinarian, or to do something totally different and speak on stages, whatever that is for you. Like they cheer you on and they love on you. And that's just a beautiful feeling to have in like my back pocket to call up whenever I need. And it's just like, yeah, a community is everything. It's so important.
Yeah. And I didn't know that, especially again, being the oldest and having to figure it out by myself. Like I was the type of girl who would rather Google something for 18 hours than ask you, hey, Jess, how do I do this one thing on my website? I would rather Google because I didn't want you to think I was dumb. I didn't want you to think I was incapable. So I didn't want to become a burden to you. So we sometimes let those beliefs that are not even ours, they come from generational passed down beliefs, stop us from plugging into a community. And now I think back, I will happily call Jess and say, hey, Jess, so I'm trying to do this one thing. I've never done it. You've done it. Can you help me? Again, she can say, no, I don't want to help you, but then you ask somebody else. Like, but it
Yeah.
doesn't make you dumb for asking for help. It doesn't make you weak because you're asking for help. It doesn't make you whatever belief you have in your mind or a burden. Like, it is our divine right to be so supported. And I didn't know this until now that I'm in a community and I see, like, I could literally come up with the most wildest dream and tell our team, hey, this is what we're doing next. They will say, okay, what comes next? How do we get started? They don't even question it. And I was seeing in our mastermind with all the clients, we have a chat where they communicate and they share like the next thing that they're working on for the month. And I see them saying, oh, I'm doing this. Oh, I'm doing that. And the amount of love that gets poured in there is wild. But again, it gives each other belief that, hey, somebody else sees the vision that I see. And it continues to pour that fire in you to keep listening to that more, because sometimes that more doesn't make sense and it's okay. It doesn't give you, it gives you the more, but it doesn't give you the direction.
Yeah. And I think too, like I used to put the more, like they're an age on the more. Well, when I'm this age, I actually still do it now. It frustrates me to no end. Well, when I'm this age, I will be there, or I will be more, or I will be at that next level. And same with when I was younger, right? Like, oh, when I'm 10, I'll be able to do the monkey bars with one hand. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
But there's no age on it. Just because Cristal did it at a certain age, or I did it at a certain age, or anyone did it at an age, there's no timeline on that more. For some people, it could come when they're 10. For some people, it's going to come when they're 55. Like, and I think leaning into that too can make a really big difference. Here, it's all about doing things differently, unconventional lives. Like for some of us, we just, follow that confidence in whatever that means in our life. And unconventional often comes with an age. And I think leaning into that sometimes, just being like, hey, it's okay if my more comes now. It's also okay if my more comes later. Like, I love that focus.
Yeah. And it's, again, plugging into that community, just giving you permission to start whenever you want. And as far as like the age thing, I have a client who's 61 years old, started working with me at 59. And it's a couple, it's a couple, they're married. She has gone through cancer twice. He used to be a handyman. Now they have a podcast. They're speaking on stages and they're 61. And I always think to myself when I meet new clients or when I talk to people and they're like, wow, I'm like, hold on. First of all, Mark and Cheryl are 61 and they're rocking it. They put their very first live event last year, October 2022. They had about 20 something people attend. Like, but they're learning Zoom. They're learning what Airbnb is. Like, they're learning all these apps that for us might be like, oh, they just if you want to pay me, you can just send me a Cash App. You can just send me this. Like, they're relearning the system, but they're also like going after their more at 61. And I always think about them like, dang, there's no age to do this. No age to do this.
I love that reminder, because I think we often put a gap on it. Like, oh, well, now I'm 30, so that means I'm done. I should have my family figured out, my career figured out, life figured out, and then like it's all downhill from here. Like, I do not want to be going downhill yet. Like, I am ready to keep pushing up the hill and going until forever, and until I'm ready.
And
so
then
go ahead.
I was gonna say, and then the age thing too. I think going back to what took me down my spiral in my darkest time was the age. I was like, hey, I'm 22. I'm the youngest teacher in the district at that time. Hey, at 22, I already had a house. At 22, I had like a brand new 0 miles, like BMW. That was like my dream. Like, at 22, I had all that. But then at 22, like, what came next? The kids, the marriage. Then like I started thinking, okay, I have to have this all by like 24, 25, because by 30, I should have life figured out. And now I'm 31 years old, currently pregnant with our baby boy. And I thought to myself for so long, I thought I had failed I had failed being a woman, I should say. I had failed my parents because I'm the oldest and I didn't have a baby. And that alone, like the age, I think when we give ourselves full permission to say age doesn't matter. Like, I have to constantly say that because I tell myself that often, but age doesn't matter. What matters is like, in this season of life, am I happy? And if the answer is no, how do I make myself happy? What do I need to do that's going to keep me excited for life? Because if I dwell on this age thing, I'm going to lose it. and things happen. And for us, one of the big things that put me down this spiral was like having babies. All my friends at 25 were 3 kids in, 4 kids in, 2 kids in. And I was over there I had just called off my engagement. So I wasn't even engaged anymore. And wondering like, how am I going to have kids? And should I adopt? And should I do all this? And because there was so much pressure of, I'm the oldest, I should be giving my parents a grandchild. And like that age is like, I always tell myself like, age, it doesn't matter. When you become a mom, when you start your company, when you start the podcast, it's going to come when it needs to come for you. And when your heart wants it, not when everyone else's timeline happens.
Yeah. And even your timeline, like everyone else's can have pressure too, but yours as well. That one that we created or the one that society created for us, like frig that. But like, I totally can feel that pressure that comes, especially with that family life and all of those pieces with it. I'd love to dive into the topic of breath work. I know you love it so much, and it's just such a transformational tool. So what led you in that direction of becoming a breathwork facilitator, and how has it improved your quality of life?
Yeah. So again, I was the type of kid who I have no heart. That was like my line of proudness. I have no heart. I don't cry with movies. Feelings are for the weak. Like my dad would always tell me, girls don't cry. And I remember as a little kid, I knew like if I would go to school and kids would pick on me, like I have to, like my mentality was like, defend yourself before you get picked on. And again, now going back to it, I think it was my parents got here illegally and they were always hiding. I didn't find out they were here illegally till I was 21 years old. So I didn't know any of this. And I grew up learning to be very defensive. And now I look back at it and it's my dad was trying to teach me how to be tough the best way that he could. I'm the oldest. Now I know if they got deported, I was going to be here in the country with my siblings. So I was being raised tough. So at 20 years old, I was the type of kid who say what you need to say about me. Your words don't matter to me. It doesn't faze me. I'll cry behind closed doors. You'll never see me be weak. That was like my badge of honor. When I lost myself and I went through this whole season, I started experiencing anxiety to where I would cry myself to sleep every single day for like 7 years straight. I hated going to sleep. I hated being alone with my thoughts. So that's why I led into drinking, because it was easier to get drunk and then go to sleep fast and I wouldn't feel. When I was going through these dark times and I was starting to discover myself, I was at a real estate event that I shared a little bit about. And they went into breath work, and 2 minutes in, I was closing my eyes and I felt tears coming down and I was like, nope. And I literally got up and I was about to walk away. And something told me like, Cristal, sit your butt down. And I came back to my seat and I sat down and I looked around first. And again, there were all these men. And the validation to me was, well, if a man's crying, it's not that bad if I'm crying, because I'm a girl. Like I remember thinking that, and I went through it, and just that's the most peace I had felt my whole life. I cried like nobody's business that day. But what was beautiful is that I didn't tell a single person what was happening to me. Like my pain didn't need to be validated. I wasn't sharing it. It didn't make me feel weak. It just made me feel free. And then we closed the session with everybody got up and everybody hugged strangers. But it was the most purest hug I have ever received from a human being. And they hugged you for like 40 seconds, like a minute, like solid hugs. Were in that room. We became one. And what happened moving forward is I started studying breath work and I got certified. But what I learned is under this layer of toughness, there was a lot of fear. There was a lot of fear of disappointing, of what if I can't? What if I let somebody else down? It was a lot of fear of being afraid of myself even. And through this breath work, I discovered layers of so many things, but I also got to, because I was so afraid to tell people what I was feeling, what it did is it freed me in so many ways, where every time I would breathe, I would discover a new thing about myself. And it allowed me to get to know myself deeper and deeper and deeper, to the point where when I was having a rough time, I would just come in and breathe. When I felt lost in the journey, I would come in and breathe. And the beautiful thing about breath work is that we as humans, we have different layers. So we have our intellectual layer where about 89% of us live in our head all the time. This is like the mid chatter that we're doing dishes and the chatter comes in, we're driving, and next thing you know, we're questioning we could even do that project. That's the mid chatter. Then we have the pillar, which is more of our ground centered pillar, which is what we feel when we're out doing yoga. Like we get a little taste of the, that was such a good workout. Oh, I feel good. And then we have our embodied pillar, which is the pillar where we really get to listen to ourselves. With breath work, the beautiful thing about the breath is that you surpass both of those pillars and you go straight into your embodied pillar. You get to have the downloads, have the idea. So when life was rough, I would come in here and breathe. And I didn't need to tell anybody else what was going on. I was still so I don't want people to know my business. I don't want people to know I'm weak. So I would come in here and do it myself. And then I would have an answer. And I was like, okay, I think this is what I'm supposed to do. And it helped me guide me as I was starting the entrepreneurial journey. Fast forward now, I do breath work right now to prep for baby. I'm planning to do a birth with no medication. If it goes the way it's meant to go, because obviously I know it's our first baby. I don't know how my body's going to take it. Baby could be breached, like all the things, right? But I'm prepping for a birth where I don't want to do medication. I want to do breath work the whole time. And breath work connects you to like the truest essence of you. And that's what it's done for me now. When life gets rough, I breathe. When I feel frustrated, I breathe. Like there's nothing, like you can't tell me who I am or people's opinions of me. It doesn't matter because I know who I am. But I found that all through breath work by being able to just breathe. And it sounds so silly because we think breathing, but it's literally breathing.
Yeah, because we'll be like, hey, like, what do you mean breathing? Like, we breathe all the time. Like, I'm doing it right now. It's so easy. Yeah. It doesn't help, but it's a totally different experience when you do it in the way that breathwork facilitators show you how to do it. And it's so freaking cool. Like, it's the coolest thing. And for you to experience that kind of emotional release that you've probably been holding on to for so freaking long, it just like comes out of you, and no wonder you'd be scared. Like it just like a lot of us would try to run too, and it's just a different experience. Yeah. So if someone was looking to start it, it's not essentially just like breathe in. Like there's more to it. What would someone do if they were looking to kind of step into that journey of breath work?
Number one is we actually have a 7-day breathwork breakthrough challenge. So it's 7 days. You can start it whenever you want. It's $7. We literally made it like $1 a day because I was like, how can somebody just join this? And the reason why we didn't make it free was because if we make it free, 90% of you won't finish it. It's 100%. That thought of like, oh, it's free. I'm not going to do it. So we made it $7. But it's 7 days. Every single day has a theme. Every single day has a breathwork session. And then you also have a journal questions to dive deeper into what comes up. And that's why I recommend everyone. It's 7 days. It's a 7-day challenge to have your own connection, your own breakthrough. As far as like how to start it, if you want, I can also send you, we have guided sessions on the podcast as well that people can try, because it's not just breathing. And also the other thing is there's breath work. If you have anxiety and I dive you into breath work of like fast patterns, I'm going to trigger your anxiety. So every single pattern is a little different. The 7-day challenge is very chill, is very like take it at your own pace. It's very easy breath work that is beginner friendly. But that's where I recommend everybody to start first.
Perfect. And Cristal will send me all that information. I'll put it in the show notes so you'll be able to click it there and try it out. Like I just did breath work this morning too. It's just a beautiful way. Sometimes it's one of the only ways for me to get into my emotions. I can be really cold too. So I've been working through that, and I love how it gives me that opportunity to feel and to open some things that I haven't been able to touch for years. So it really is a beautiful thing. Can you tell our listeners where they can connect with you online, what they can expect from your podcast, She's Made for More?
Yeah, so I'm mainly on Instagram. I live on Instagram. Right now, I feel like there's days where I'm not on Instagram because I'm navigating a new journey of my life and realizing some days I'm just tired, and I just go absent for a day or so, but for the most part, I'm on Instagram. As far as the podcast, we have interviews, we have conversations with other women sharing their journey, we have pump up talks, we have breathwork sessions, we have meditations, we have tools that just help you embody your more. Whether you need an episode where you're going to hear somebody else talk about like the real raw conversations of how hard it is to embody your more and what they've done to overcome it, or whether you need a pump up talk or just like a tool to help you connect to your abundance or whatever it is, that's what the podcast is for.
Awesome. I can't wait for everybody to go check it out and check you out, Cristal. Thank you so much for being here. I have a couple questions that I ask every guest that comes on the podcast. Mm-hmm. You ready? You ready for a little rapid fire?
Go for it.
What is your favorite compliment to receive?
I love your energy.
Yeah, I love your energy, Cristal. So good. What is your favorite thing to do to boost your mood when you're feeling grumpy?
Dance and sing.
Oh, okay. I love it. And do you have a song or a quote that boosts your confidence?
For song, I have this song that's called I Believe Most People Are Good. And I don't even know who sings it, but I can look it up for you, but I don't know off the top of my mind, but it's a song that just, ever since I was like in my 20s, you hear it and it reminds you of, I don't think people are evil. I don't think people are bad. I think people are going through really rough times, and it grounds you. It's always grounded me back to my truth. And my truth is I only believe what I can believe from people.
I love it. Is it a country song?
It is.
Yeah, I think maybe it's Luke Bryan.
I can look it up for you exactly as we're talking about, but
I don't know why. I was like, that name popped into my head, but I do remember that song. It is a good one.
Yeah, Luke Bryan. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much, Cristal, for being here, for sharing your truth and being the real you with us. It's just an absolute gift to see that side of you and just to hear all of your stories. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me. It's truly been an honor. And like I said, any conversations, any questions your listeners have, I'm always just a DM away. I'm an open book and I can share anything, whether it's going to be beneficial for them, but I'm always just a DM away.
Amazing. When we first started, I asked Cristal if I could ask her any questions, and she said yes. And I said, great. I'm going to ask you about how you conceived your son. She was down.
I was like, I have the date. I have details.
I love it. Thank you so much, Cristal.
You're so welcome.
What's up, sis? I am so glad we could hang out today. If you love this episode, send it to a friend or share it on your social media and tag me so I can personally thank you for helping me sprinkle some confidence in the world. And don't forget, you are magic. Let's show the world your shine.